A very good evening to you, South African, those watching around the world. My name is Blaine Herman, and this is It's Topical live from KwaZulu-Natal, the port city of Durban, the Nkosi Albert Lutuli International Convention Center. Important discussions being had here with regards to the SADC, 46th SADC Heads of State and Government Summit. Top on the agenda, issues ranging from regional integration. We talk about infrastructure, critical minerals forming part of critical discussions. What about food security? All these issues impact the close to 400 million people that live in this region. That's why the SABC is here, and that's why we're gonna bring you step by step, blow by blow, in terms of the pivotal discussions. SABC News Live just had their first broadcast today, day one.
Yes.
Just finished at 7 o'clock. Bongi Mzwandile is the host with the most. Top issues, Bongi, that stood out for you?
Critical minerals, the economy, regional integration.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are key in terms of affecting all these 400 million people that we're talking about, the 16 countries. It's important you go on tomorrow on SABC Plus, 8 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Definitely.
Catch the Oracle live on SABC Plus. So this is what we're talking about, right? How can this region turn the enormous potential into tangible progress? We got some of the better minds on the program to give us some insights, but we want you to react as well, engage with us. Let's put up the question of the week, and we ask you, with South Africa chairing SADC now, where is this region heading to in terms of development, in terms of inclusive industrialization? Let us know on our Facebook page, SABC News. We're also on X at SABC News_TV. But give us a call as well, 011-714-0677-7879, 011-714-0677-7879. That number will appear on your screen. We want you to start talking. Any issues that you have, we'll have the people in the know, as we say, on It's Topical. Perspective coming up. Well, top discussions, big on the agenda. You heard what's at stake here because of the magnitude of this region. Spokesperson for President Cyril Ramaphosa, Vincent Magwenya, joined me now live. Thank you, sir, for your time. I know it's been a busy day, lots of activities, but it's not only today. There's been a series of meetings that's been happening here in KwaZulu-Natal in the build-up to the Leaders Summit. I wonder, President Cyril Ramaphosa taking up the chairship, now formally, not interim anymore, what is his main priority as chair?
Well, the chair is often guided by the priorities of the product grouping. And the priority of the president will be to see to it that the decisions that will be adopted during this 46th summit of SADC heads of state and government are implemented in a rapid manner, that we sustain the cohesiveness of the group, and that there is consensus on the most pressing issues that impact the region. And a lot of these issues are nicely contained in the theme for this summit. And those issues tomorrow during the closed session will be issues that the leaders will reflect on as decisions that must be adopted by the summit. They will have been fleshed out in a great deal of detail by the ministers and the officials during the build-up that you referenced and alluded to. And so the president will be keeping a keen eye on how well, as a region, we are able to see through the commitments that are undertaken during summits such as this.
Always the key issues with regards to this, and from the people that we spoke to on the ground, the general public, is the implementation of these decisions that are taken at summits like this. What sort of assurances do you have for the 400 million people in the region that things will get done?
Well, things do get done. You could argue that when they do get done, that happens away from the glare of the cameras. But there are areas where you're able to see measurable, impactful results. Take, for example, Madagascar. SADC decided to intervene in Madagascar following that change of government. Where is Madagascar now? The national dialogue is about to commence. Sectoral dialogues have started. There are general improvements with respect to the economy in Madagascar, with respect to the allocation of budgets and so on. And the country is relatively stable. It's still afflicted by a number of challenges, and those challenges will take some time to resolve. There's a panel of elders that was set up by SADC that assists with assisting the Malagasy people with the transition. Even electoral reforms are being worked on as we speak. And so there are areas where you do see implementation. However, there are areas admittedly where things do take time. So for example, the ratification of the Africa Free Trade Area, for example, there's still countries in the region and elsewhere on the continent that have not concluded those processes. And those processes are key with respect to the industrialization or re-industrialization of the region, with respect to enhancing trade relations amongst the countries in the region. And so you do get pockets of accelerated implementation, and yes, you do get pockets where things do slow down, and some of the issues or the issue that will be discussed tomorrow will be how do we get that rapid, quick action where it's needed the most for the benefit of citizens in the region.
You mentioned electoral reform, and maybe we can talk about the electoral processes on the continent. Zambia just had the elections. There were some issues with regard to the counting. It was stopped, then resumed. Does the president have a view on what's been happening there?
Well, the president won't express a view necessarily until he's been formally briefed. And we haven't had the benefit of a formal briefing with respect to the developments in Zambia. Once that briefing has been received, likely through SADC, since he will be taking up the chairship of SADC, then he will have a view, but that view will be more a view that reflects the region rather than his own personal view. And of course, South Africa, through SADC and through bilateral channels, stands ready to assist any member state of SADC, including Zambia, should they require South Africa's assistance.
Right. You held a briefing last month saying that there was this campaign almost to isolate South Africa on the continent. I wonder if this is an opportune time for the president to deliver a message to the leaders. What would he say?
Well, there was such a campaign, and at the time, this was prior to the president dispatching Minister Lamola as his presidential envoy to Ghana and Nigeria. And since then, we've seen the sort of dialing down of the noise or the tension, so to speak, that we were seeing coming from Ghana in particular. In SADC, there is unity, if you like, with respect to the understanding of the complex nature of issues of migration. There is a deep appreciation that it's not a South Africa problem, it's a continent-wide challenge that the continent more broadly must reflect on. And so within SADC, there's almost unanimity in how we look at these issues and how we feel that the entire continent must be mobilized around an honest and open discussion with respect to what are the push and pull factors that cause people to leave their countries of origin and go to other countries. What do we need to do together as a continent with respect to peace and security, with respect to economic development, that will create more economic opportunity or more pathways for economic opportunities so that people continue to reside in their own home countries. Within SADC, that issue, there's more unity in terms of that. Even today, when the president met with the president of Mozambique, President Chapo reiterated his earlier view when he spoke to the president that this is not a South Africa alone issue. With respect to the message the president will deliver, first of all, South Africa is not going to be an agenda item. I think that's important to clarify, and nobody has sought for that to happen, that South Africa becomes an agenda item. There may be a scenario where the president takes up an opportunity with respect to other matters that may be discussed, to then update the leaders with how South Africa has responded to issues of illegal migration and the subsequent protest that has followed, and how South Africa seeks to work with the region and the rest of the continent in addressing these issues.
Is the president happy with the attendance in terms of heads of state? We had a chat to Minister Lamola saying that there's about 10 heads of state out of the 16. Has that changed?
As far as I know, and I stand to be corrected, I think the minister will probably have a better sense than I do of the heads of states that are present. 10 out of 16 is a good attendance. Often you will then have, I think, for example, Malawi, you have the vice president. That is still considered senior. Zambia is in the midst of elections. I was earlier on talking to the president's chief of staff in Zambia, who was saying they don't even have a cabinet at the moment, so they couldn't have even dispatched a minister to attend. So you kind of understand that. What is important here is the contribution that countries give to the entire process. From the time officials assist with the text that contains the various resolutions to the Council of Ministers. Tomorrow, it's really for leaders to then reflect on these issues and adopt the various decisions that have been taken by the Council of Ministers. And with that, in that regard, the President is satisfied that every member state has contributed sufficiently to the entire process.
What would be considered a win, not for President Cyril Ramaphosa as President of South Africa, but as Chair of SADC, post this?
Well, what will be considered as a win is, are we staying true to the theme, number one? Number two, are we as SADC adopting the decisions that reflect our commitment to the theme? But more importantly, do we have a clear roadmap of how these issues are going to be managed, where there is a need for accelerated implementation? How are we going to manage that? That will be considered a win for the president as chair of SADC.
Mr. Magwenya, thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you very much.
All right, Vincent Magwenya speaks for President Cyril Ramaphosa. Let's just remind you about a question of the week, and we ask you, as South Africa takes up the chairship of SADC, where do you think the region is heading in terms of development, one, as well as industrialization, inclusive industrialization? What does it mean to you? Let us know at SABC News_TV, also on our Facebook page, but please give us a call. We'll take you live on air right now, 011-714-0677-7879, number on your screen. Write it down. I'll chat to you soon. Quick break, more next. Welcome back. You're watching It's Topical. Let's remind you about our question of the week, and we ask you, as South Africa takes up the SADC chairship, where do you think development is heading in terms of industrialization? Where do you think that is heading as South Africa takes up this chairship? Let us know on Facebook, SABC News, with South Africa now chairing SADC. Where is the region heading on development and inclusive industrialization? 011-714-0677-7879. You probably know the number by now. Please give us a call. We'll take you live. We're live in Durban, KwaZulu-Natal. We've got some interesting experts, the better minds as we call them. Let me introduce them. Professor Kula Teletsane is the Director of the Organ of Politics, Defense and Security Affairs at the SADC Secretariat. Thank you, sir, for joining us. As well as SABC News Specialist Correspondent Sophie Mokoena and SABC News Political Editor Mzwandile Mbeje. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am, for your time. I think it's important time that we have you, Prof, just as the Troika Summit ends. I think some of the big takeaways, and we've been keep on hearing as the opening ceremonies or the opening remarks that we took, was the key issues of the Eastern DRC. We talked about Madagascar as well. Priorities for this summit, what are they?
Look, in terms of are you referring to the summit or the organ troika?
The organ troika.
The organ troika. Yeah. Look, the organ troika, as you have stated, the main issue on the agenda was Madagascar and the DRC is for us to see peace prevailing in the Republic of Madagascar, and then the constitutionality as well as the civilian government returning into the Republic of Madagascar, having a free and fair elections. That's what we want to see by next year. And Madagascar has made a promise that they are working towards that.
What are the sticky points, do you think?
At the moment, really, there is nothing much to worry about given what they have presented, given what we have observed. We have been to Madagascar 4 times with the former President Joyce Banda, engaging the stakeholders. Yeah. And of course, there are issues. There are issues of maybe some arrest there and there. But for me, I think we should really give them time and see how far they go. Let's not focus on the sticky points. Let's focus on what they say they are going to do. Let's give them a chance, and we can only judge them at the end of the day. Yes.
Sophie, what's the air around the ICC? Is it blowing as optimism, pessimism, especially dealing with the big issues like Madagascar, like the Eastern DRC?
I think the expectation outside the conference is very high. Ordinary people are thinking, will this summit be one of those summits where leaders are just talking and we don't see the results on the ground? Because you know that when SADC was formed, at that time it was SADC. At that time in 1980, the intention was to ensure that these Southern African countries work together to build their economy and the economy of the southern region. At that time, South Africa was under apartheid, and therefore they were saying we cannot rely on Pretoria because there's a push international to isolate Pretoria, and we can't be seen as doing business with Pretoria. But we want to work together because we have to change the lives of our ordinary citizens. That's why it's a community. It's about the people. And therefore the people out there, whether you talk South Africa or any member state, would want to see tangible results, but also the discussions putting them at the center, not the leaders at the center or the politicians at the center. And therefore that's what people expect. People are very skeptical about this meeting. They are very critical. They are tired of all these summits.
Something that Mr. Vincent Magwenya was saying in terms of action and tangible action. I wonder, Mzwandile, from a political point of view, from a domestic point of view as well, how are people seeing this conference? There would be a risk of people wanting South Africa to deal with domestic issues, such as the issue of migration as well. But the bigger umbrella issues might get lost in that. How are people framing this?
Well, it's quite an important summit, as you've said. In fact, talking about how are people framing this, the fact that we may have some of the organizations picketing, that does tell you that they have an interest. And for me, what will be interesting is the kind of message that they'll be picketing about. So we know in the past few weeks what South Africa has been grappling with in terms of migration. Make no mistake, that will certainly, from the people's point of view, come to the fore. But perhaps to the question that you posed to the colleagues here, you know, this issue of Madagascar, you know, I remember a SADC summit in Mozambique. sitting the heads of state speaking about the very same thing. You know, is the same script, and I'm sure when Prof goes back to the notes and when they try to deal with this thing, it's exactly the same. I remember, I think Manana back then, and look at what's happening today. So then the question is, Blaine, how are the leaders of the region dealing with the issues that keep recurring? You solve them today, but they are back tomorrow exactly the same way. So how are they dealing with them? So when people outside say you have to deal with the issues, I think the leaders need to be able to come up with practical issues, because the statements have been so many. I mean, when you look at the text of almost every summit, if you've covered this summit, they look exactly the same, just the change perhaps of the names.
We asked you to give us a call, 011-714-0677-7879. We're going to take your calls in a short while, but we want to hear from you as well. How are you seeing this summit? Let's go to the word on the street. We took to the various streets of Johannesburg to canvass some of your views. This is what you had to say.
Each country should develop its own economy per se, drive the economy hard so that we can create total growth and GDP development in Africa.
I think SADC countries should work together to create more opportunities for their people so that we can minimize this illegal migration.
We have different minerals and products that we have as these African countries, right? So if we could work together, we wouldn't want to be dependent on other Western countries.
SADC has got a serious issue when it comes to migration. As South Africans on the ground, we have heard a lot from politicians, but if they can address the issue of migration for us, it will go a long way.
It's better as SADC countries to work together so that we can be able to prosper and be able to help each other, because we do have all the resources as SADC countries, so we just have to stick together.
Southern Africa as a whole is very rich in resources and skills, and most of those skills, the people who are taking advantage of it is companies that are overseas. So I think them coming together could spark a discussion on how they could bring more funding to African companies based in the SADC region.
Thank you very much indeed for your thoughts on this. I'll just remind you about that number, 011-714-0677-7879. We're going to take a quick break. I'll take your calls next. Welcome back. You're watching It's Topical. Critical issues being discussed here in KwaZulu-Natal at the ICC in Durban. Some of the critical issues are critical minerals as well, right? Africa's critical minerals. How can we use Africa's critical minerals, the infrastructure, in terms of sustainable development? That's some of the issues that the theme actually talks about, industrialization. And I guess the framing of these kind of issues talks to some of the domestic issues, because the argument being made that if you sort out the economic situation or the peace and security situation in majority of the countries in SADC and around the globe, Africa, then maybe you can address to a certain extent the immigration issues that people are dealing with here domestically. Prof, I wonder, and this is one of the key phrases I heard at Troika, preventative diplomacy. And it remains indispensable at this stage. There's a global security is becoming more and more complex and more unpredictable. How does SADC insulate itself, maybe not a good word, but kind of buffers against these external forces?
Look, what we do as SADC, we have different structures within the organ. Like you talk about the preventative diplomacy. We have the panel of elders, we have the SIAC. Normally SIAC will deploy, and I'm sure you'll come to the issue of Zambia. SIAC will deploy with the election observer missions. You have the MRG, mediation reference group. So there are structures. So what is important though is whether are we using those structures to our advantage. But the structures are there. And if you read about those structures, how they were established and their mandate, you will realize we should not be sitting where we are if we are using those structures. But if we continue to have structures that make recommendations but we don't follow up on those recommendations, we will find ourselves where we are today.
Sophie, do you expect Zambia to become an important agenda point at this summit?
Not at all, because you'd recall that when the last summit met, Zambia was not an issue. Zambia became an incoming. In fact, South Africa is going to hand over to Zambia next year, and therefore it wasn't a factor at all. And at this moment, the fact that counting did continue, and it looks like the Electoral Commission in Zambia is doing its work. You see even people, Zambians and others outside Zambia talking about the trickling results. And therefore, I don't think there's no way Zambia can be on the agenda now. On the agenda, when you look at the Troika, you had DRC because of the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo, where you still have a conflict raging on, and now you have Ebola that is compounding the problem. You also have Cabo Delgado, even though a lot has been done to bring down the attacks, but those insurgents, some of them are still there. And also Madagascar, as the prof has pointed out, the main one was Madagascar. But I guess because the president of Madagascar is here, he was there laying the wreath, it looks like SADC is managing that situation with the team that SADC appointed, an envoy being the former president of Zambia, Joyce Banda. Therefore, for now, but I think the leaders themselves will be watching with keen interest what's happening in Zambia. It is going to be a South African problem should there be challenges, because Minister Lamola, who has been in Zambia mediating on the issue of the return of the body of the former president of Zambia, Edgar Lungu, having been there, he has created relationships. I think if there's a need, he will be dispatched as the chair of the Council of Ministers. The president also taking over as the chair will have to do something if there's a serious problem.
I wonder, Mzwa, the president's handling of SADC issues. SADC is no doubt primarily a regional responsibility, but can it have domestic political costs or benefits?
I think the fact of the matter, Blaine, is that as South Africans, our fate is directly linked to the fate of the SADC region. So whatever issues we have, so there is a way to resolve it, and the way to resolve it is to engage all parties, because at the end of the day, we are intertwined. So that's why I suspect behind closed doors, outside of those main issues that you've spoken about, the issues that relate to migration, which is an obvious one, would actually be looked at quite seriously in terms of how they are being dealt with. Because, I mean, if you look at the kind of the agenda and some of the issues that are on the table, whether it's the infrastructure, what these countries want to do as the region. So in order to be able to carry out of all those agreements properly, you have to have some sort of understanding. So yes, there are issues that are domestic to us and to other countries as well. But be that as it may, all those countries actually need each other. It's just the how they then deal with those issues that perhaps are divergent at the moment.
We are on the eve of the Leaders Summit here, Monday, bright and early. We will welcome the leaders here at the port city of Durban, but already they've been out and about. Some of them have been out and about. Sophie Mokoena was at the R Tambo statue where wreaths were laid in honor of R Tambo. And also tonight there's a welcome dinner, and it's where we find our colleague Samkele Maseko. He's live for us at the precinct, the ICC precinct. Samkele, What's happening where you are?
At this point in time, we did not receive that invite. I can say, Glenn, at this point in time, we did not receive that invite for the gala dinner tonight, in the words of Vincent Magwenya, the spokesperson of the President Cyril Ramaphosa, saying that Samkele, you guys were simply not invited to the gala dinner. It's a family affair behind closed doors, where we will be deliberating on critical issues that will ultimately be further ventilated in the Leaders Summit tomorrow, particularly on the hot issue of migration. You did hear the President earlier on during the week delivering his lecture at the University of KwaZulu-Natal at the Durban Westville campus, speaking about how South Africa is not proud of how the migration issue was handled within the country, when thousands and thousands of undocumented migrants within the country were sent home by those whom were protesting. And at some times there were incidents of violence and there were incidents of inhumane behavior, particularly when you had those individuals and young children here in Durban sleeping on the floor, waiting for transportation to take them to their respective countries, particularly in the main, those were Malawian citizens who are undocumented currently on South African shores, which sparked government to come in and have a transit camp that was set up in Limpopo, just outside Musina, in order to have those undocumented migrants sent back to their countries. President spoke very vociferously on this issue at his lecture. We do understand that SADC nations have also spoken about their displeasure in the handling of the migration issue to President Ramaphosa, and they will definitely engage on this matter tomorrow. It may also be raised in a light note over a meal this evening in preparation of the discussions that may take place tomorrow in the Leaders Summit. But one of the most critical issues, particularly within the SADC region, is trade amongst these countries, growing one another's economies. Because if you've got huge migration, President Ramaphosa says that people are moving from their respective countries to another country for economic reasons and for political asylum. And nations have to thoroughly introspect and look as to why there is migration from their countries to other countries. What are people running away from? Because South Africa is an oasis of economic activity, where everyone on the African continent, and particularly within SADC, wants to come and apply their trade within South Africa. Particularly also when you look at the constitution that South Africa has, it opens up doors for everyone. Look at the preamble of the South African Constitution. It says that South Africa belongs to all who live in it, and most African countries and citizens of other African countries want to come to this oasis of economic activity within South Africa in order for them to make money so that they can live, but also to broaden their horizons on their respective professions. Then when you go to issues of infrastructure development, when you look at the DFIs that will certainly be thrashed upon in the Leaders Summit tomorrow, on how Africa and SADC in particular builds its infrastructure and trades amongst one another, particularly when it comes to the commodities that are short within the African continent. That is predominantly, that is oil. With the Strait of Hormuz having been closed at this point in time, you need other producing African countries that can come in and close that particular gap and reduce the cost of living within African countries, so that we don't feel the impact of the changing geo-economic and geopolitical landscape globally that is affecting African countries. Then the Africa Free Trade Agreement will also come to fruition within the deliberations within these SADC countries on an economic basis. So we are looking at this particular summit in the main being about peace, stability, but underlined with that peace and stability, it will be anchored by economic growth of these particular countries.
You buffer against the current geopolitical shocks. Samkele Maseko, live for us on the floor of the International Convention Center in Kosi Albert Lutuli. Thank you very much indeed for your reporting. We'll try to get back to Samkele in a short while. We're going to take a quick break. More discussion next. Welcome Welcome back. You're watching It's Topical. Let's remind you about our question of the week, and we're asking you, as South Africa takes up the chairship of SADC, where do you think the region is heading in terms of development as well as in terms of inclusive industrialization? What does that even mean to you on the ground, practically, in practical terms? Let us know at SABC News _TV. We're also on Facebook. But give us a call, 011-714-0677-7879. I've been dying to take your calls. Finally, we can. And we have Kustas calling us from Johannesburg. Kustas, a very good evening to you. What's on your mind, sir?
Good evening, Blaine, and thank you very much for the great show. Blaine, I am very hesitant, call it, not hesitant, but rather not really trusting much in terms of what's going to come out of this summit. Like Mr. Mbeje had said, is that they tend to speak one thing all the time. So what is going to be offered the most likely lip service. But in terms of development, what we would have been like to see or to hear from them was how they're going to go about ensuring the energy security of the region. Namibia is pushing ahead with drilling on the Orange Basin in the Atlantic Ocean, and yet South Africa last week has just been curtailed in terms of industrialization, meaning we cannot extract our natural resources for the benefit of the country to make sure that global instability in the north doesn't affect the region. So I'm putting it to you to say that without oil and gas, we are vulnerable as a region. And it's not something that these leaders are going to talk about because they always say the same thing all the years and no one holds them accountable. And what happened the last summit? What did you say? Why did you not deliver? So I don't have really much hope in terms of what's going to come out. But oil and gas, energy security is a priority for the development of the region. Thank you. Is a priority for the development of the region. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. We'll take your concerns and your questions to our guests in a short while. Let's go to Deborah. Deborah's calling us from Johannesburg. Deborah, a very good evening to you. Your questions for our guest? Deborah, are you there?
Hi, good evening, yes.
Deborah?
Hi, good evening, yes.
Deborah?
Hi, good evening. Hello? Hello?
In a short while, Control, just keep her online. We'll try to fix up that line and get Deborah back. But Prof, you hear some skepticism with regards to the urgency of implementation from the past summit, what has been done. Kustas is citing energy issues, but there are an array of issues that were discussed at the last summit. Pull back the curtain for us and take us into confidence in terms of how the discussions unfold, especially in the Organ Troika.
You need to understand one thing. When you get 16 countries under one room, and each country have a different foreign policy, and that is a fact. Now you bring them under one room and you want them to discuss certain issues. It is not that easy. It is really not that easy. But in terms of the organ, the beauty about the organ though, it's only 3 countries. At the moment we have Malawi, Eswatini and Tanzania, of which we do not know who will take over tomorrow as the incoming. But having 3 countries is better. But now what you need to also understand, it's easy for the 3 countries to come up and make a decision, but they are not a decision maker. Whatever decision they make, it has to go to the bigger summit for endorsement. Like whatever we discussed today, we are going to be presenting it tomorrow to the bigger summit for endorsement. And like I say, each country have a different foreign policy. Each country is sovereign. There are so many dynamics that we have to deal with. The other issue, like Sophie was talking about, if you have to compare SADC now with back in the days, the political leadership in many countries have changed. Your SWAPO, okay, we still have SWAPO. In other countries where they have lost those liberation movement, you have now the new kid on the block who don't share the very same ideology that were shared by those in the past. So those are the dynamics that we have to deal with.
Probably
in
a
SADC.
question for both of you, Mzwa and Sophie. Sophie, to you first, with regards to the changing of the political landscape on the continent, specifically in the SADC region. How has that changed the dynamic within SADC?
It has. Take the government of national unity in South Africa. It's not as easy as it was when the governing party was the ANC, the former liberation organization. There was continuity, much as there were change of leadership and the tensions that we saw during the change of leadership within the ANC itself as a governing party. But there was continuity in terms of policies. Now, when you have the opposition taking over or having influence in government, they also have their own policies, and they have made promises and commitments to their own constituencies who voted for them. Take, for an example, Zambia that we are talking about. I mean, there has been lots of change of government to different parties, not the party of the old men that we know, you know. Now you have other parties, and they have different interests. The current president of Zambia, a businessman, almost like a capitalist, and therefore the policies are going to change. And therefore, in the region, you now only have ZANU-PF, Chama Penduza, SWAPO, of course ANC still leading government, but you have government of national unity, and therefore members of the government of national unity, they also put pressure on the president or the policies to influence direction, as there's contestation right now with the foreign policy of South Africa. And therefore it becomes very, very difficult. And this is what is happening. Inside there, you will have that kind of robust, even some of our opposition parties in South Africa have relationship with Zambia because the current president of Zambia was part of the opposition group in the SADC region. Dumaboko, the president of Botswana, was part of the opposition group. Now he is in government. The comforting issue with Dumaboko is that his party originally was a friend to the ANC, and therefore it becomes very, very problematic to balance those different views and those different interests.
Mzwa, before you answer, Control, just put up the slide for the viewers. I just want to show you some of the critical issues that we're dealing with here, right? And these are the agenda points: critical minerals, infrastructure and energy, something that Kustas spoke about. We talk about agriculture, regional integration, peace and security, something that Prof is dealing with, right? I wonder, when dealing with such important issues, can politics get in the way?
It definitely does. And I think here is the other thing, particularly with SADC. You know, there's a perception, rightly or wrongly, that these countries, particularly these countries which are seen to be very aligned with each other, don't call each other out. Look at some of things that are happening in respective countries. I mean, if you are interested in getting your neighbor to do the right thing, so you must be very frank and honest with that. And also, what is also problematic, and I'm saying this perceptively, what is problematic is what is being seen by people. Let's make an example of the extension, for example, of a term in Zimbabwe. Yes, it's a domestic issue, but what does it say to the broader region? Let's look at what happened in the last elections, for example, in Tanzania. So what exactly happened? What was followed up there? Of course, we've just been speaking about SADC now. So you then look at all those issues, you group them together, and versus what you want to achieve as a region. And there are these small issues which other people would say, but you need to be able to deal with this quite easily because you are brothers and sisters, but somehow you either turn a blind eye or you are unable to deal with it. So then, how do you then undertake a massive project that will connect the region to the benefit of all? And then on top of that plane, you have the DRC that never ends.
And on that note, we will have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for your time, Mzwandile Mbeje, Sophie Mokoena, as well as Prof. Thank you so much indeed for your time. It's a lot of work still to be done as the main day of the Leader Summit kicks off tomorrow. Thank you very much indeed. All right, before we go, here's my take. SADC meets at a critical time, right? That can't be underestimated. But for me, it's about turning Africa's critical minerals, its infrastructure, and its huge agricultural potential into tangible progress, into real jobs, into real investment, into real growth. And that should be lingering in the minds of the leaders that are present here. And that's my take. All right, if you missed anything on this program, then be sure to watch this episode of Topical on YouTube as well as SABC Plus. Until next week, my brothers and sisters, take care. Bye-bye.